We called him Lord, King of rain, rider of the clouds. We prayed to him for harvests, built him temples, feared his voice in the thunder. Then everything changed. The prophets called him an abomination. His priests were slaughtered, his name erased, rewritten and buried. But they failed. He didn't die. He transformed. He was a god, and now he's a demon. If you too are an abomination, check out Pantheon, our brand inspired by myths, legends and folklore. We ship worldwide and are rated excellent on Trustpilot. Link in the description. Baal. It means Lord, and for centuries that's exactly what he was. Worshipped across Canaan and the greater Levant. He was the centre of a religious system that predated the covenant. He was foundational. His name appears in city names, temple records, and personal inscriptions. He was the god to be acknowledged. But when the Israelites entered Canaan, they brought with them a different understanding of the divine. Their god was exclusive, singular, powerful, but jealous. A god who made covenants, issued laws, and demanded loyalty. With that, Baal had to be removed. In the earliest biblical text, Baal isn't described so much as denied. His worship is condemned outright, often with violence. The book of Judges references cycles of apostasy, where Israel did evil in the light of the Lord, by serving the Baals and Asherahs. In 1 Kings 18, the prophet Elijah confronts Baal's priests on Mount Carmel in a contest of power. Yahweh sends fire. The priests of Baal are executed. The message is theological and political. This land has only one God now. It's important to understand this was a contest of cultural memory. Baal had been worshipped in Canaan for generations. He was tied to the land, to the seasons, to the kingship and survival. The Israelite rejection of Baal was revolutionary, a complete inversion of the previous religious order, and yet traces of Baal persisted in names and places and habits. Some kings bore names like Jerubbaal, meaning let Baal contend. The memory was still embedded in the culture. The condemnations were trying to overwrite identity. Baal was still powerful, but now his power had become dangerous. He was no longer the storm god. He was the enemy within. To demonize Baal, Israel turned to a god who looked just like him. Baal and Yahweh shared the same divine traits. Both were storm gods, both rode on the clouds, both hurled lightning as weapons and wielded rain as a tool of power and punishment. In Ugaritic texts, Baal is called rider of the clouds. In Psalms, Yahweh is called the same. Baal makes the land fertile with his voice in the sky. Yahweh speaks through thunder. Baal slays Yam, the sea god of chaos. Yahweh splits the Red Sea and defeats Leviathan. They are competing models for the same role. The heavenly king, the cloud rider, the one whose presence is both generative and violent. This is what made Baal so dangerous, his proximity. Baal represented an alternate past, a rival memory, a fully developed religious system with temples, rituals, stories, and legitimacy. The Israelites weren't facing a primitive idol cult. They were facing a fully formed mirror of their own theology, with its own cosmology, kingship, and priesthood. Baal didn't just compete with Yahweh in concept. He competed in practice. To remove Baal was to sever the cultural lineage that linked Israel to its Canaanite surroundings, identity warfare, a national exorcism, and yet Baal couldn't be fully erased. Erasure only works on what is alien. What is familiar must be rewritten, and so Baal was reframed. He became the false lover, the seductive king, the spiritual rival who mimicked holiness while drawing people away from the covenant. His rituals, once seen as sacred, became corruption. His storm, once a sign of blessing, became the tempest of judgment. The symbols remained. The meanings changed. In psychology, we fear what is uncanny, what is too close to what we trust. the doll with human eyes, the voice that sounds almost right. The shape in the mirror that doesn't blink when we do. Baal was a theological uncanny valley, too close to Yahweh to be ignored, too legitimate to absorb, and so, like all uncanny things, had to be rendered monstrous. This is the paradox at the heart of Baal's demonization. He was cast down because he was too much like God. To say Baal was wrong would have been simple. But that wasn't enough. He had to be more than wrong. He had to be treasonous, a threat, a betrayal. This was no longer theology. It was projection, psychological displacement embedded into Scripture. A war between gods who shared the same sky, and in that reflection we see what demonization really is. It's not always about condemning what's wicked. Sometimes it's about executing what's too familiar, cutting the image out of the mirror before someone else mistakes it for truth. In some early texts he's called Beelzebub, an exalted lord, a title of power and prestige. In Ugaritic inscriptions, Zebul denoted height, dwelling, and majesty, a divine throne name, but in Hebrew tradition that name was changed intentionally. Beelzebul became Beelzebub, the lord of the flies, a calculated insult, strategic blasphemy, changing a single sound to collapse a god into filth. To say his name was filth, his temple was rot. The god once tied to thunder and harvest was now a master of decay, surrounded by buzzing, mindless things that fed on the dead. The insult was designed to invert the divine. The storm god became the corpse king. His throne became a swarm, his crown became a cloud of insects, his speech reduced to meaningless noise. In the language of satire, they dragged him through the filth. Beelzebub as a word survives. It appears in the second book of Kings. Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are going to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? The tone is sharp, disgusted, a rebuke. But it's in the New Testament that it becomes a full demonization. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus is accused of casting out demons by the power of Beelzebub, the prince of demons. By this point, the name has crossed from foreign god into satanic hierarchy. He was now an infernal commander, second only to Satan. Once you name a god as demonic, everything associated with them becomes contamination. Worship becomes idolatry, ritual becomes corruption, and fertility becomes lust, kingship becomes tyranny. Their symbols become traps, their temples become haunted, and Baal, once lord of clouds and kings, becomes shorthand for everything that stood outside the covenant. His name became a container for everything forbidden. Why? Because he represented the old order. Beelzebub becomes the label you put on what used to be sacred but must now be feared. In Christian demonology, the name settles. Beelzebub becomes one of the 7 princes of hell, sometimes interchangeable with Satan, sometimes his second. In the Dictionnaire Infernal, he is associated with gluttony, filth, and pride. In Grimoires, he commands legions. In folklore, he enters homes through insects, possession, and disease. The name survives, but only as blasphemy. The Ars Goetia isn't new to this channel. Its pages have appeared before, 72 names, each bound in a hierarchy. The first name in the list is never arbitrary. The first name in the book is Baal. Baal predates the book, the framework, even the cosmology it belongs to, and the grimoire doesn't introduce him with an origin story or a fall from grace. He is simply presented as a king. No context is given, none is required. His title precedes explanation. The text is clear. Baal is a king of the east. First among the 72 spirits, he commands 66 legions of demons and is described as having the ability to grant invisibility, wisdom, and influence. His knowledge is tactical. He makes men wise and cunning. He teaches them how to move undetected and how to gain power through manipulation. Skills taught by something ancient, something already fluent in the architecture of command. His form is described as strange and monstrous. He appears with 3 heads, one of a man, one of a cat, and one of a toad. Each head functions as a fragment of perception. The man speaks to authority, recognition, the memory of what he once was. The cat suggests secrecy, speed, and instinct. The toad, slow and cold, speaks of the baseness and filth. They are aspects of Baal's power, refracted through the lens of demonology. His body is built to disorient. The name itself marks the shift. Baal, meaning Lord, was a title of reverence across the ancient Levant. As he moved through layers of rejection, mockery, and containment, the name warped. Baal-Zebul became Beelzebub. Baal became Baal. Baal Latinizes and flattens the name, folding a god into a system of demonic taxonomy. It's the final step in transforming something once worshipped into something summoned. And yet he still carries the trappings of royalty. He has a seal, a sigil, a name that remains first in the list, unchanged in position across manuscripts, treated with the same procedural respect as any monarch would expect. In magical practice, Baal is invoked to disappear, to move with freedom, to act without being seen, to manipulate without resistance. He is a writer of rules. This is what happens when a god is repurposed. His mythology becomes methodology. His temples are gone, but his name is still summoned by magicians rather than priests. He now grants power rather than reign, influence rather than fertility. He still holds court, still grants favours, still rules. They took a god already covered in centuries of slander and gave him a new throne. This is what demonology does best. It contains gods. It builds a structure around them, strips them of context and replaces worship with function. The name is retained, but the role is inverted, and yet the fact that Baal remains first, unchallenged, uncorrected, untouched in a rank tells us what the Grimoires already knew. Some gods never lost their authority. They were simply moved to a new domain. He became king of hell, and the crown he wears now means exactly what it meant before. We just changed who was allowed to bow.